My name is
Jenny.
David.
Lila.
Laurel.
Jen.
Lisa.
Dino.
Hari.
Kyle.
I was a
Jehovah's Witness.
Jehovah's Witness.
FLDS.
In the Amish church.
The chosen people.
I was a Scientologist.
I grew up a Mooney, a member of the Unification Church.
2x2.
And I am
Shunned.
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 Stunned. Stunned.
Shunned.
Hi, my name's Dianna. I'm 50 years old, and I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
Hey, Dianna. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
So I was pretty much raised around Jehovah's Witnesses my whole life. So it's an interesting story. My grandmother, my dad's mom, was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and she came in later in life. She was in her probably late 50s. She was one of the ones baptized at the big convention of Jehovah's Witnesses at the Yankee Stadium in, like, I think it was 58. So it was like a 10 day convention. So she was there. And so she was 58. She was born in 1900. So she was 58. I believe that's accurate. So my father was already like an adult when his mom became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But he had a couple sisters that were a little younger, and there was a huge family. There was 15 kids in the family. Not all were living. So my dad was one of the younger. And then he had a couple younger sisters that were witnesses. So when my mom and dad got married, my mom and grandma didn't get along so much. But my aunt and her husband were witnesses, and my mom was her husband was just a very kind man, and my mom was really endeared to him. And because of that, my mom opened up. My mom was raised Baptist. So they would go to the meetings I was trying to think of what year it would have been. So it was probably the early 70s, maybe even the late 60s. They would started going to meetings and quit celebrating Christmas, no holidays, but they never did. They both smoked. My parents were smokers, and my mom could not kick the habit. And then after my dad passed away, so that would have been like 77, my whole life, I don't remember not going to meetings, but that's all we did. We went to the meetings. We went to book study, we went to the theocratic ministry school, and, the Watchtower. We did all the meetings. Well, we would always leave Sundays. We would generally leave before the Watchtower study. I don't know why, but so
really? So you all would just go for like the public talk?
Public talk, yep. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So in like 80, probably 84, my older siblings, because I'm the youngest there's 7 kids total, but 6 living. So I'm the youngest of all the kids. And so my older siblings, a couple of my older siblings started like becoming more involved. They got friends, and because we would say we were Jehovah's Witnesses, but we really weren't. No one was baptized. My mom would always say, I believe like Jehovah's, I believe the way Jehovah's Witnesses believe, but I'm not one because I smoke. She was very concerned about not bringing, reproach on Jehovah and the organization by smoking. So my mom would always, say those things. And she'd made a friend that was a witness, and they would walk together in the morning. So in 86, I think it was, 2 of my siblings got baptized. And then because of that, my sister she was 7 years older than me, but she's the next in line, but we were always really close. I just followed what she did. Right. So I became more involved, and I had a personal study with someone, and I joined the theocratic ministry school and started making friends in the hall. And then I was baptized in 89. And
How old were you then?
I was 15.
15?
Yep, 15. And then my mom was baptized in like 90, something like that. So she was baptized. She finally quit smoking. She was baptized after all us kids.
Wow, that must have been a big moment for her. I mean, my goodness, she had been kind of it sounds like skirting around the edges of it, wanted this thing, but couldn't quite get past the smoking.
Exactly. And everybody, there was people that had, I mean, they'd known my mom for 20 years, seeing her come to meetings and then
Wow.
finally being baptized. It was a very emotional moment, not only for us, but for a lot of the friends in the hall, because, they'd been rooting for her for so long. So,
Can I ask, so um going back a few steps, so your mom, it sounds like, so it wasn't your dad, but it was your mom through whom the witnesses kind of came into your part of the family. Is
yes.
that correct?
So it was
Even though
No,
he was
my
actually
dad's
related to
family.
witnesses.
Yeah, yeah, but my mom
Wow.
was the one that kind of grasped onto it. And I don't know, because my dad passed away, what his feelings were about it. Like,
Sure.
if he just went along with because of my mom, or if he truly, it was like, if it was there with him, if he felt, truly attached. I don't know,
Was
because
he baptized? Do you know?
oh, no, no, he would never was, because that he died in 77, and they were both, like I said, they both were smoking at the time, so they would go to the meetings, but not, they didn't do anything else until, like I said, 80s. So I have, my oldest brother is not a witness. My oldest sister is not a witness. Then I have another brother, he is baptized, and then two sisters that are baptized. So out of the six kids, four of us were witnesses.
Hmm. So what was it for you that led to you getting baptized in 1989? Do you remember, was it that you really felt a deep connection? Were you just trying to do the next right step and the right thing to do, so to speak, or what was it for you?
So it's funny, because I do believe that it was just, it was not, I've never felt deeply connected, even though I went through all the motions. And I had friends, of course, that were witnesses. And so it was definitely the next step. It was
Right.
kind of what was expected of me. And because it's all I'd ever known, like, my mom is she was a very strict mother. She had six kids, she was raising on her own. So she had to be very strict. And I would say somewhat controlling. Or maybe a lot. But she was a good mom. She was very loving, but like, it was like, there's only one way in life, this is,
That's
which
the
is
witness
the
way,
whole wrong.
right?
Exactly. So I never, I was not that person. I was not rebellious, and I may have been sneaky at times, but I was not rebellious. So, I would just go along. I just went along. And it was like, at times I would think, man, people would talk about praying, and I'd be like, I'd try it for a while, and I'm like, this feels weird. And, but it was never like a deep attachment or connection there.
Sure. So, like a lot of folks, myself included, it wasn't some deep connection to it. It was just, hey, I'm raised in this family. This is what we do. These are the required steps. I know I have to do this at some point. So, you do what you need to do to get by, right? It's just the
Yep,
path.
that is
Uh,
100% accurate.
yeah. Yeah. Um, did you did you have a lot of friends? Did you go to regular school? Did you have a lot of friends and stuff at school, or
So I did go to a public school,
okay.
but I lived in a town about 30 miles from the Kingdom Hall. This is another interesting thing. So I lived in a little town, and about 30 miles away was, even though we were in a town called Jackson, we were in Waverly's territory. So like, so that's where we went to the hall, was Waverly, because there was not at that time we started going, there was not a Kingdom Hall in Jackson. There was one in the county, but it was like the opposite direction. And so we always went to Waverly. Well, when my mom started really getting serious about the truth, she worked in town. So they had built a new Kingdom Hall in town in Jackson. And so she started going there. So I went to the meetings with my sister and my brother. And my mom went by herself, even though I was like a teenager, we didn't go to the same hall. So, but I grew up in an area where there were so many teenagers, so many young people, period. So like, I mean, I had three girls, four girls that were like my best friends, and we did things together all the time. But within my congregation at any given time, there was like, I don't know, 20, 30 kids. I mean, there was a lot
Oh,
of kids.
wow.
It was very, a lot of kids. And the neighboring congregations, we knew, when you're Jehovah's Witness, it's a very small world, and people. And we just had, around my age group, just tons of people to hang out with and socialize with. So that makes it
So,
easier.
okay, so that, yeah, that's true. So then, well, I guess easier in ways, harder in ways,
But yes,
depending
exactly.
on if you're staying or you're going. Um, but so then, did you feel like you maybe didn't need to make friends at school because you had all these friends at the Kingdom Hall?
So it's funny because I only went to school with a couple other witnesses. None of them were in my grade. But I always had friends at school. We just didn't do anything outside of school, of course. So I don't know that I didn't feel like I didn't need to make friends at school because of that, but I just, maybe because I had so much of a social life with my friends at the hall, it just didn't dawn on me like, oh, normally if you weren't in this situation, you'd be hanging or wanting to hang out with these people outside of school. And
Sure.
for a long time, I actually did. I had a best friend growing up, that I would go stay at her house. She would come to my house, and there was never a problem with it until we started getting serious about, the truth. Started studying, and then that just split off. And I saw her even this past summer, and we like hugged each other and we talked and chatted, and but like that relationship really divided around the time we were probably 16 years old.
So did your mom, so you grew up in a family where your mom wasn't baptized for most of it, wasn't really, I mean, you were leaving halfway through the Sunday meetings,
Yeah.
but were you, so you weren't super preemie, and that it sounds like you weren't doing like all the witness things
No,
necessarily.
and that was the other thing. So during those times, when my mom was on the outskirts, just we didn't really get invited to witness events,
That makes sense.
we didn't, so we still socialized heavily with my mom's family. My mom's one of 11 kids. So, and she was very close to her family. Um, so like, I remember we would do things like we would go to my aunt's house on Thanksgiving Day, but not for Thanksgiving dinner, you know
Mhm.
or sometimes I remember once going to my aunt's, and there was some sort of, I think it was a Christmas party, but we weren't there for Christmas. We were just there to hang out with the family. So there was like no gifts. There was, for us, there was no gifts, no trees, things like that. So I always had a close relationship growing up with my mom's family because we weren't strictly involved with Jehovah's Witnesses. So we were still able to have that relationship. But it's funny, I can see looking back now when it really started to change. And my mom was still close to her sisters, and she would witness to them. Um, but there was definitely a point in my teen years where you could see that division starting to happen among our extended family.
Even at that though, it sounds like while you weren't the most preemie, super witness family at first, at least, you were still living by the rules,
Oh yeah.
written or unwritten,
Oh yeah.
about, the holidays, and probably, I don't know, I'm guessing you weren't celebrating birthdays.
I never celebrated anything growing up. It was a
Okay,
so like I said, I would, even as a kid, I remember being 9 years old, 10 years old, and being like, I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't do this. And, even though we were not strictly in it at
sure.
school, like during holiday parties and stuff, I'd be removed from the room and I'd go sit outside in the hall or go to an office somewhere and hang out. So I mean, I was never involved at all in any of that when I was a kid.
Now, were you all regular at all the meetings, even if you didn't stay for them all or stay for the entirety? And did you all go out in the ministry and things like that?
No ministry until my brothers and sisters started, having a personal study. Um, that was and they were the ones that took me in service. I never went with my mom. Probably in my whole life, I went out in service with my mom maybe, I don't know, 3, 4 times because she
Wow.
went to a different hall and I went to it. So we did. There was a period of time like the book study at the time. What's what we The book study was at my grandmother's. Well, it was at my grandmother's and then it was at my cousin's. So it was right. We lived in a rural area. It was right out the road from us. So we were always at the book study. Um, and I feel like we were always at, Thursday night meetings. I think probably we started staying for the Watchtower study. I mean, it was pretty early on. I would say, early 80s, late 70s that we actually started staying for those meetings too. So I would say, but we didn't necessarily study. We'd get to the hall and crack open our books, and they would go because we hadn't opened them.
Pages have never been separated.
Exactly, like you're like, oh. And then I remember seeing, people studying, and there you had all the highlighters, and you felt that pressure, like, oh, I got to do this because everybody else is doing it.
Well, with that said, were you all active at the meetings? Were you commenting? Did you have expectations around that?
Nope. So we were just there
Hmm.
to observe, I mean, and we would like get there early but go find our seats and sit down, because my mom is like, she is like not a late, like you can never be late, that was her for anything. She's that person.
A very JW thing
Very
for a
JW.
lot of JWs. Yeah.
Exactly. So we would go and get there early, go to find our seats and sit there, and people would come up and talk to us. And then as soon as the meeting was over, we'd split. Until we started actually, like I said, my siblings started to become more involved. Then we may hang out for a little while. Um, and then as I got older, I remember like, going out for pizza on Thursdays after the meeting, and um a little bit more involvement within the congregation.
It's interesting because I could see a realm in which you would have felt, could have felt like I don't belong anywhere. I don't belong at school because I'm different, and I don't belong at the meetings because I'm different. Did you ever feel that way?
I did actually,
Okay.
because it's funny because my friends, um, two of my closest friends, their dads were elders. So, like they were always their hand was up and they had these comments and they had family study and they knew they were well known in the circuit. We would go and everybody knew them and knew their families because they were, had been around the truth for a long time. So, um, sometimes I would go with them places to other halls and I was just there like the nobody. Nobody knew who I was. I didn't have any. I felt kind of out of place, the tag along. And um so yes, that definitely was the case when I was a teenager. And then I'd go to school and I have friends there, but like some of them would say, well, we can't talk about that in front of you because you're a Jehovah's Witness, and they would want to like protect me, or so yeah, it was kind of a weird position to be in because we were on the outskirts for so long. But and then finally when we did become involved, it still was like we're still on the outskirts because among Jehovah's Witnesses there's this thing about names of people, like the family names, like, oh, this we'll just use the name Smiths. The
Sure.
Smiths, their grandfather, and he was a circuit overseer, and you know how that goes.
Mhm.
So yeah, my name was not recognized.
Yeah. Did the congregation rally around you guys at all? I mean, you had lost your father and things like that. Were they super supportive of the single mom bringing her kids?
I think they were always nice to us, but not I wouldn't
You
say
would think that they
supportive.
would, but a lot of times they don't really rally around somebody.
Exactly. And I think as long as like the rallying around them was studying.
Yeah, there you go.
So
Yeah,
we're going to study with you.
we're gonna
And
study.
that was the one thing. And I remember this one sister in particular, she was always like, she would come and study with us. But like, I don't remember anything else from anyone other than that.
Mm. If you're feeling stuck in your life after cult involvement and can't find the life you want, leaving a cult is a new beginning on a path to healing, not some magical end itself that is healing. Relief from the immediate pain feels good at first, but that's not necessarily true happiness. The feelings of social awkwardness and isolation, lack of self worth, perfectionism, patterns of being attracted to emotionally unavailable people, not even knowing who you are yourself. All of these things and more are lingering effects of that environment. Being in a cult isn't just following a doctrine, but it's following a culture, a way of life, a way of being that doesn't just go away because you stopped attending meetings. If you want to shortcut the path to healing instead of trying to figure it out on your own, maybe even work with me professionally in my cult recovery coaching practice, you can find opportunities to do that and also for other cool resources at my website, exjwhelp.com. That's exjwhelp.com. So, what was home life like growing up as far as Uh, well, did you guys get along pretty well? I mean, you mentioned there was some controlling there, which obviously, if you're in a cult, there's going to be some control exerted. You're in a high control group. So
Yeah.
someone here is attracted to control.
Yeah.
And that just stands, that's kind of a given to some degree. So there may have been some of that, but what was it like at home growing up in your family?
You know, my mom was she was a very loving mom.
Mhm.
She was even after my dad passed away, she did remarry for a period of time.
Oh,
But the man she married, he was not a witness. Um, he just was not a good person. So eventually they were married, and then they divorced, and they got married again, and then they divorced, and that was it. You know, so when I was about 13, 12, it was done for them forever. But she was like, she cooked and she was a gardener and she was just a really good mom. Like she was always there for us as far as like, you know, making sure we had everything we needed, even though it was hard growing up, a single mom, 6 kids, you know,
I
it's
bet.
yeah. And she didn't have a good education. So we always had I felt like we always had what we needed, and she always found ways to go above and beyond. Like, I don't know how she did it. You know, we would go on vacations and do activities during the summer. But she was very, very strict, and she um there was no like conversation. It was my way. This is the only way. And you didn't question it. You didn't you didn't go against it, you didn't argue. She was very cut and dry. Um,
So there was the truth at the Kingdom Hall, but there was also the truth inside the home, so
oh
to
yeah,
speak. There was the one way to do things.
yes, very
Okay.
much so. And you know, I she was my mom was the next the oldest of the 11 kids, and a lot of responsibility of the family fell on her at a very young age. Like she quit school at 13 to help with the family. And her father was an alcoholic. So, you know, she just her whole life had been spent taking care of people, and um she'd just become very set in her ways. And you know, she was she was she was a good mom. She was a really good mom. But she could be harsh at times. She didn't cut nobody slack at all, inside or outside the home. So, and that's the other thing, she was pretty critical. And I think sometimes that may have gotten in the way when it came to the truth, because we had family members that were witnesses, that she didn't always she didn't always, I don't even know how to put it. She was just very critical of the way they behaved in their lives because she didn't feel like they were really living up to what they should be doing
While she was smoking?
while she was smoking.
And sometimes I think people protest because they know they've got something going on themselves, and
Exactly.
it's a way of trying to feel okay by maybe looking at somebody else and saying, "Well, look what they're doing," you know?
Exactly. But I think too for her, she was like, well, I'm not baptized and they
Yeah.
are. Look what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
so they should be held to a higher standard.
exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, interesting. Um, I do find it interesting. So it was it your two oldest or just older siblings who got
No, old.
baptized?
No, the two oldest are not
Right.
baptized.
So it's two older, but not than you, but not oldest.
No, they are both. Yeah, they are the oldest. So
Oh,
the oldest of the family, my brother and then my sister, who are like 14 and 13 years older than me, they did not because at that point in time, probably when they were ready to leave the house, my mom was
right.
just, I mean, she took them to meetings and my brother was the one that really like rebelled against it. He was like, no. And he's always had some bitter feelings about it. And
Sure.
he and my mom never really got along because I think she just was so disappointed in him because he actually when he quit going to meetings I mean he was married, he got married, and he and his wife are still married to this day, but he started going to church with her and that was a big, oh no, my mom did not approve of that at all. So there was always a contention there with the two of them. And then my sister Barb, when she quit going to meetings, she ended up getting married. She would study on and off. People would bring her magazines and things, and she was always nice and would engage with the witnesses and maybe come to the memorial. But she decided, I mean, a long time ago that she was not going to be a Jehovah's Witness. And so she celebrated Christmas and birthdays with her kids and raised them that way with her husband. Um, so that was, there were those two, and then the rest of us were all
Right.
baptized.
And so there were two, I believe you had said that there was a brother and sister of yours that did get baptized. And I find it interesting that they were the first in the family to actually take that step.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they were kids when they
Yeah,
did
they
it
were
as well.
youngers, probably early 20s,
Oh,
late
okay.
teens, so they were,
Yeah.
um, but like my family was always, I mean, because I think my mom was so strict, but like we were always good kids. Like we never partied or, drank or drugs. That was never an issue.
Sure.
So it was easier. Not saying we were just, it was probably easier to acclimate because they hadn't already gotten involved in the world.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean?
They have been
So
exposed to it longer and
exactly.
maybe
Yeah.
deeper. Were they, what was it like? What was the atmosphere like when they got baptized? Like, was your mom like over the moon?
Yeah, my mom was happy. My mom is very happy. And my mom said, she'd always say after, she's like, when she finally got baptized, she said, I'd look at my kids and say, look at what they're doing. I really need to do something
Mm,
because she felt and knew in her heart that it was the truth. But she just couldn't break that habit of smoking. So she was like, that was kind of an inspiration, that push to finally make the change. And it's funny, I remember when my brother and sister got baptized, we were going to a circuit assembly, and it was in April, and I like late April, like April 16th or something like that, and it snowed like a ridiculous amount of snow, like 16 inches. I mean, it was a
mm.
lot of snow, not like a little dusting in April.
Yeah.
And we drove from Ohio to Huntington, West Virginia in that snow because my aunt, well, she's my cousin, but I always call her my aunt because she was a lot older than me. Um, she would say, she said, these kids have finally done this. We got to get them there. And so we drove in a snowstorm, a literal blizzard, to get to Huntington for that baptism.
Wow.
So
It's amazing how witnesses will risk life and limb at times for things that could be done another time or whatever the case may be. Um,
And it was just it's crazy. Like at the time, I was like, "Yeah, we're doing this," you know.
of
And now
course.
looking back, I'm like, "Oh, that because that's a long drive and dangerous." Oh,
Well, yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, as kind of an aside, in my coaching practice and such, I work with a lot of folks, and this is why people have a hard time with self care and things like that, because we were taught that there was some sort of other goal that was always the most important. You put your head down and you sell yourself out at every level to get that thing accomplished. Your health be damned, it didn't matter. You just put your head down and go.
yep.
And a lot of people have a hard time taking care of self because we didn't matter.
Oh, yes. And
Cog in the
that's
machine.
I still it's funny, I still feel that way. And I have a niece, she was also raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. She was
Sure.
never baptized. But like she and I were talking, when you ask about hobbies, I'm like, well, I think as Jehovah's Witnesses, because everything else doesn't matter. I'd say
Sure.
probably most Jehovah's Witnesses don't have hobbies because, that's just something extra to take time away from, spiritual
You're
things.
certainly going to be shamed for them if they take too much time or energy.
Exactly. So I think like maybe that's why I didn't develop a hobby. And maybe that's why I have a hard time with self care and I have a hard time like just being relaxed. Like I really still to this day have a hard time just relaxing.
Well, yeah, we were bred to be little workaholics.
Exactly.
I mean, from you go to school, you come home, you go to a meeting. The next day, you go to school, you come home, you study for the next meeting. It's just you're always on this hamster wheel that just never stops, and nothing is ever good enough. So there's always more to do,
Exactly.
and so it's just this constant drive, running on this hamster wheel, going nowhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's hypervigilance. I mean, I could go on that topic alone, but yeah, there's a lot that plays into this, but it's very common in the X community to see a lot of folks who have a hard time turning off and just sitting down and relaxing, feel like they always need to be productive as
Oh yeah,
though relaxation is somehow not productive,
exactly. And
or sleep or whatever. Those things are productive, just in a different way.
so imagine that too. And my mom in general, like as a person she just thought laziness was, you know, like it's the worst. So my mom, it was funny. I was talking to my sisters. I was like, my mom was competitive. She always would say, I'm not competitive, but she was competitive about cooking because she loved to cook and, she liked to be known for having the best food. And she was definitely competitive about work. Like I can work harder and longer than anyone else. And she would love when people would say, I don't know how you do that. So not only was all this meetings and, no relaxation there, then at home it was chores and projects and work. She was very, like for me, looking back, I don't think my mom ever relaxed because she was just wound tight.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard the expression "work smarter, not harder."
Exactly.
We were taught to work harder and to get our entire identity from working harder.
Exactly.
And that's kind of a shame because it
It,
really pigeonholes us a certain way and prevents us from being able to explore other parts of ourselves, who we might be, different scenarios, being able to explore life, to
yes.
find out what other things we might enjoy in life. It's just put your head down and grind.
Exactly. And it's funny because you don't recognize it at the time.
No,
But when you're for me it took a while, but you step back and you're like, why am I like this? People say, "Oh, what do you do for fun?" And I'm like, "Oh, what I don't know what I do for fun." So
that's
it took a
fun.
while.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, used to I would go out door to door, but I don't know what I do now.
Yeah, it's not just that you work harder to it's that your identity is that. That's where
Absolutely.
you're proud of being the hardest working person. It's
Oh
the
yeah.
pioneer that is
Oh,
elevated because they work harder in the ministry, right?
yes.
It's all that's how you it's a performative religion, a performative cult. It's
Exactly.
about it's all performance based, and no one cares who you are. It's what have you done lately? That's what matters.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a really hard driving place to be. It attracts some hard driving people at times,
it does. And I
who
think that's why my mom was probably attracted to it because
sure,
she was already had that mindset and like, well, this is the place for me. They don't support laziness. They have high expectations, and that was just
sure.
perfect for her.
Well, and then, so some of it probably blended with her personality. Some of it probably blended with maybe she was vulnerable in different ways when she stumbled upon it. And then, your dad's passing. I'm sure that she, had resurrection hopes and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yep.
And, all of those things go into creating a person who's probably going to be kind of obsessed about a thing. It becomes an addiction. It becomes the thing they'll sacrifice everything for, including family.
Yep.
And that's all that matters because it's the only thing they trust, and it's going to give them something they can't feel like they get anywhere else.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, so did you guys, I always like to ask just, this is kind of fun to think back sometimes. Got any, favorite memories, growing up with you? You got something good where you and your siblings and your mom got to hang out and do something or something you all love doing together that was fun?
So we did go to we went to Bethel,
Mhm.
and we went to the Canadian branch. And I
Mhm.
remember we went with this family. There was a family in my mom's congregation, and like they were the most, I'll say, frugal. That's a nice word. They were cheap. They were the cheapest
Mhm.
people you could ever remember or ever know. So they had a van, and they were they were they were kind people, but just extremely, especially the dad, like tight, tight, tight. So they took a van, their van. They had like a church bus, really. It had several rows of
Mhm.
a bench seating. So it was their 5 children, me and my mom, my sister that's closest to me, my sister's best friend, and 2 brothers. I mean, they were physical brothers, but they were witnesses too. We all went in that van to New York to tour Bethel and the farms. And it was at Christmas time because we were on Christmas break. So we went into the city. For whatever reason, like they had been so many times. He was just this little country guy, but like he was like no fear in the city. So drove all over the city. We spent several days. We stayed at some, I don't even know, some witness's apartment. And they stayed, like there were 2 apartments side by side, and I don't even know who the people were. I don't even know if I met them, but we stayed there. And like it was really a great trip. We had so much fun. I remember this is how frugal they were, that they had a microwave that they kept under the seat and canned food, so that if they stopped somewhere, they could stop at a rest area, and they would take the microwave into the bathroom and plug it in and heat. I swear to you, this is no joke. This is no joke. And heat up food. So
Okay.
they also he had
Nothing like a bathroom burrito.
exactly. They also he had on his engine. This is like thinking back now, I'm like, on his engine, he had hooked up this little wire. I don't even know where it was in the engine, but it was like this little coil wire, and it fit a can. So he could actually sit a can of something down in there and heat it up.
Wow. Well, I guess whatever gets you by.
And we were like, my mom, here, and
Wow.
they were frugal, but not
Sure.
necessarily poor. You know what I mean? Like they were
Yeah.
just people that always portrayed to be like, well, I remember they came downstairs and we'd stayed at a hotel one night, and me and my mom and my sister's friend were eating breakfast at the hotel. And he said, well, I didn't know I was traveling with rich people, like
Wow.
because we were eating breakfast at the hotel and
How
not out of
dare you? The
some
opulence of eating hotel breakfast.
some can. And here's something funny. So at the time, I didn't think anything of it, but years later, so they had 3 kids. One of them was my age, and I was probably or a little bit older than me. I was probably 16. They had an older son that was probably, I don't know, 20-ish at that time, 19, and then a younger son that was maybe we'll say 12. Well, the cutoff age for the discount, because we went up in the Twin Towers, went to the top of the Twin Towers.
Mhm.
The cutoff age for like discounted tickets was 13 or 14.
Mhm.
And he lied and he said that he had 2 children, you know, and there was like 3 adults and 2 children. And I remember my mom like, "What?" But nobody said anything. We just went along because he was an elder. His father was of the anointed. So we just went along with it. But looking back, I'm like, that that's just a lie. Like, how is that lie different than any other lie? You know what I mean? So, but at the time, you just don't think about it. You just go along.
Of course. Um, I do have to point out though that I asked you for a fun memory, and it was a Bethel trip. Back to what we were talking about, right? Like, what else did we do? That was what we did. That's where then it would be.
Yeah. And it's funny, like we did as a family. That
Yeah.
one was like I did a lot of stuff without my mom because for whatever reason we just had different circles.
Mhm.
Um we used to, my friends and I, witness friends, we would go square dancing and we would drive an hour away and square dance. Like what a random thing. And we would do this like we had a really active social life. Looking back, like every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was with my friends. We were going somewhere. We went lots of parties, lots of, witness parties, but
Sure.
we would travel. I remember one time there was 5 of us girls and we drove from Ohio to Kentucky, probably 3 hours away to this little itty bitty town for a party. And we didn't have cell phones back then. And my mom let us. And we were like, the oldest was like 17. And I'm like, I would not let my child do that today. Like, I'm not going to let you drive 3 hours at 17. No. But so we had a lot of freedom because we were good kids.
Okay. Um, After you got baptized uh, at 15, so did you pioneer or do
Oh,
anything that like indicated that you were quote a good kid? Was there something you were doing?
yeah. So I was obviously in the theocratic ministry school.
Mhm.
Um, I did pioneer and that was back in the day when, like you had a pioneer and then you had auxiliary pioneers.
Yep.
So I was baptized in November, late November. So December, I auxiliary pioneered because I had time off during Christmas break. And I remember going out in the cold, 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 cold. Um, and then this summer, because my friends were going to auxiliary pioneer, I would auxiliary pioneer, and it was actually fun because like I could just we would hang out all day, and we were in a rural territory most of the time, so it wasn't like there was a lot of driving time, a lot of chatting time. So we would auxiliary pioneer, and then when I graduated, I signed up to regular pioneer. I went to pioneer school, and then I pioneered for like a year after that. I ended up getting married very young. I was 19, almost 20 when I
Mhm.
got married, and not long. I don't think I pioneered the first whole year we were married. I struggled with it.
Um, well, yeah, I mean, life would change there. How was it? So pioneering and such. Look, I'll look back and I think kind of like you, I had a lot of friends around 16, 17, 18. I had a car. I would drive us everywhere. We went fishing and played basketball, went to movies. We're always doing stuff. And it was honestly, it was a great time. I had a
It
lot of
was a
fun
good
with my
time.
friends at that point. Really, really was good. That first taste of freedom, I think, in some way. And we weren't doing anything either that was gonna like get us in trouble or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but and then pioneered and everything. So when did it hit you, or when did things pioneering can be somewhat easy if you have support.
Yeah.
Was there a point at which pioneering got hard? Was that when you said you got married, or was that before that? Like, was it? 'Cause I know I stopped at the end of my first year because nobody was supporting me, and I was already not doing well financially just from buying cars to keep this
Right.
thing going.
Yeah.
Working several part-time jobs. So how were you supporting yourself doing all this?
So I had a part-time job, and back then, I mean, surprisingly, I was like a nanny housekeeper a couple days a week, and they paid really well. Like looking
Mhm.
back now, I'm like, wow, I think back then, I'm talking 92, 93, they were paying me, I don't know, $12 an hour.
Oh, that would have been a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like
I was
it was
making like 4.25 an hour at the
right,
Wendy's.
right. And so I would do that. So it was, like it was enough for me. I didn't have a car of my own. My sister was also a pioneer, so I could, ride with her. But for me, once I got married, I moved to a new congregation, and so I no longer had my friends. Um, there were not a lot of young people, like 20ish, you know. So there was a lot of old women, and older people, and it was just no longer fun. It was like work. And then financially, it was hard. Not my ex-husband, but we were working for a brother in the hall, cleaning carpets. And, like I ended up having to get an extra job, or like a job, a regular job, to support us, and my hours were struggling to get them in, and the elders wanted to talk to me about what they could do to help me, you know get back on the list, or not back on the list, but get my hours up. And back then it was 90 hours a month, I think, so, or close to 100, because it was a
Yeah, it was
thousand
90. I used to
hours.
do it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
1,000 hours.
Yep.
So, which broke down to about 90 a month. So yeah, so I just eventually went off the list. um and it was just too much. It was just, to be honest, probably the no longer fun thing was the biggest part of it. um there was some really crotchety people, grouchy, set in their ways. You have to do it this way, and very controlling. There was one sister in particular, she always wanted to drive her car, and she seemed older when I met her. Like, I mean, she was older, and she was very aggressive with the truth. um and like it was it was awful. It's the whole time, to be honest.
Was she aggressive with the people in her car group, or with the people that she was meeting at the doors, or all of the above?
Both. She had this ring that she would wear, and she had it like on this finger, and it was about this, like this big around, and she would go up to the doors and use that to knock. Tap, 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 tap. That was her knocking ring, and she was old school, so she was known to like stick her foot in the door. And like when people would try and say, well, I don't believe the way you believe, she'd say, well, I know that, that's why I'm here, with that pseudo smile. And
Oh, you did such a good job of the smarmy JW. I was sent back to certain sisters that
you
brothers
just
and sisters that I knew. Yes.
you got that, like, whoa,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was her, and
Wow.
she was rough, and so that was like the beginning of the end. And there was others that were also uh there, and of course, because I was younger and this was a congregation of all older people, the way I dress was scrutinized. And, like, even though it was things I'd worn my whole life that nobody had a problem with, all of a sudden, well, this slit is too high, or that skirt is too short, or, whatever it was, even though by most people's standards, it's beyond modest. It just, when you're an older woman, and, everything becomes, she was very critical.
Well, yeah. Well, and you were a younger woman, and
Exactly.
certainly young women in the congregation get a lot of scrutiny for their appearance in a lot of ways,
Oh, yeah.
from a lot of people, and that's
And her job was to counsel me and
yeah.
help me, stay in line, to see the errors of my ways. And yeah.
You see that it's not just there's the larger cult of Jehovah's Witnesses, but then there's the individualized version of that. Is you have a lot of folks who end up being pretty narcissistic, really, who
I,
think that you need to mirror back to them who they are. You
oh,
need to
yeah,
reflect who they are in order to be acceptable, and they will let you know. And it's sounds like you had one there.
I did. Yes.
Um, so you were also working. So you met a brother, you got married. That's a big moment in your life. Did you get married in the Kingdom Hall, or
Yes. And we, because, like I had at that point in time made a lot of friends in the organization,
oh,
different, halls, and he was well respected in his congregation. By the time we were married, he was a ministerial servant. So like it was, our wedding was huge. I think I mean, there was probably 350, maybe 400 people there. And then we had a reception. And so, everybody was happy to celebrate with us because he was in a similar situation. His mother was a witness, his father was not. His father had passed away his senior year of high school. So we were both, just being raised by our moms. And our moms were the only one in the truth. He had also grown up in the hall since he was, I mean, his whole life. So it was one of those things, like everybody was really celebrating us because we'd overcome life's trials and, we're doing well.
yeah, no, that's quite storybook, I think,
Yes.
in a JW way. Um, and so you two got married. See, he ended up being like a young ministerial servant.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And he was very much so, very much, well, I mean, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are, but very much about show, uh,
Mm.
the pretense of who you are, right?
Yeah, it's a very appearance focused.
Exactly. And like, we always had to be there early, and he would run mics and, parts on the meetings, and he was really reaching out to be an elder. And of course, like I said, we were the younger people in this congregation. And I remember that once they couldn't come up, well, every time, the circuit overseer would come around and he'd be waiting for his appointment, and sometimes it was, you're too young, you're just not seasoned. But one time in particular, I remember they said, well, you know, it's just the way Dianna dresses. And I'm like, I've been dressing this way, like, nobody had a problem with it. But now that he's going to be appointed, and in particular, I remember that, well, the splits in her skirt are too high. Now, mind you, the skirt hit my ankles. Okay. They've obviously never tried to walk in a skirt that's ankle length without a split in it. And the split probably came to literally the back of my knee, but it was too high. And that was the reason, like, and I remember being really offended by it because I'm like, literally you can see what, the back of my calf. If I wear shorts, nobody's going to say a thing about that. But, all of a sudden it's, the split is too high. And so he was, he did not really like get on me about it. Like he was
Mhm.
defensive. Like he was like, this is ridiculous. I remember like me putting the skirt on and turning around, like, where is it hitting me? Because we were trying to figure out what the problem is. And then eventually he was appointed as an elder, and, like he was the young elder. We didn't have children. And, um, like the kids looked up to him, like he was, the cool one. Um, so then I mean, I don't know. What's your next question in that regard? Because I could go on and on and on. I could just spew all kinds of stuff.
Well, I had noticed also that you said something about working for a brother doing carpet cleaning and
Oh yeah.
such. Um, I don't know what that experience was like for you. I know a lot of people who work for brothers. Um, Either the brother takes advantage of them and pays them really low wages and expects the world, or the employee who is a brother, doesn't show up, doesn't, half-asses it and expects the brother who's the owner to take care of them. It
Hmm.
creates a really weird dynamic in a lot of these businesses. So sounds like you guys were kind of struggling financially a little bit around that time.
Yeah, so it's this brother and his wife had moved from out west somewhere to help out because the need was greater and there were like no young people, there, so they had two young girls. And I will say he was a pretty awesome guy. Like he was really
Good.
dry, like, but like just a really good person. His wife, on the other hand, she was the pioneer, and she was aggressive also, and like very the word I'm looking for, like like she would say things but meant something else, you know what I mean? Or
Passive
like
aggressive?
what'd you say?
Passive aggressive?
Yes, that's I was like, I cannot come up with that. Very much so. And she was also very, very judgmental, and she was very self-righteous, and she was like a problem within the congregation as soon as they got there. Like there was always spats and fights with her and other sisters. And so like he's this super easygoing, nice guy, funny, and then he's married to her, and you're like, gosh. So we never had really any problems with him. And he was always fair, like paid fair for what he could, because he came and started this new business from nothing. And eventually we bought a van and a machine and kind of branched out on our own. And he was fine with that. And he was like, he would help us with it. He was a really genuinely good person. um but like she was always there. And she and I became friends, but like it was that friendship where I didn't really have anyone else. So and it was always like walking on eggshells, that friend where you just are like, oh. And so I would not, like, they never really saw probably the true me, because I was just afraid of what she was going to say or do, because she was harsh, real harsh. um but
Um,
eventually we bought our own van and machine, and it still was it was still financially, because it's a seasonal business,
sure.
um it was hard. So that's when I started working at the furniture store, was to help offset that, because when I was busier there, around the fall holidays, his time, then he picked up in the summer, so it kind of balanced it out.
Hmm. So, how did your marriage go, or where
So
did life take you and your husband? Obviously, you're talking to me today, so I'm guessing things must have changed over time in a lot of different ways.
yeah.
So, where did things go for you?
So he and I were married a long time. Um, we never had children. Uh, he was an elder, but then a friend of ours, his best friend, who was a witness also, lived in a neighboring congregation. They'd grown up together, and then he'd moved away. His wife and I, his friend, they're both our friends, but they were the wife and I grew up together. Um, they moved away, and he was killed tragically in a accident. His van, like he had this work truck, and it he they don't know what happened, but they found him underneath it in his front yard, and they had two small girls. So it was terrible. It was
Brutal.
really tragic.
Yeah.
Um so when that happened, the wife, here she is, a single mom, and my husband felt the need to be there for her. They bonded over him and the loss of him. Well, it got to the point that it became more than like normal, bonding. I remember at anniversary of his death, they went and sat in the cemetery and hung out that day, just the two of them. And you listened to music and talked about him. And, you know, well, it became odd. It became too much, like not not just counseling.
Well, he
I
knows
don't know
better
that
than to
they
be
ever.
alone
What'd you say?
anyway. As a witness elder, he
I said
knows
no.
he's not supposed to be alone with a member of the opposite sex anyway, like that.
Exactly. So I don't know that anything physical ever happened between them, but like
Mm.
our whole life revolved around making sure she was okay and her kids were okay. And like every day he would get up and send her an email in the morning, go to the basement, hide in the basement, send the email, because back then texting was not common. And so, and I would say, "What's up with this?" "Oh, nothing. I don't understand. I just helping her out." And I'm like, "But it feels weird. It feels not normal." And there was a
Definitely.
definite relationship between them, to the point that one day she showed up at our house. And at this point in time, I mean, I was consumed with it, so like I'd lost a bunch of weight and I was just a shell, because like my husband is involved with another woman, and I can't make him see like this is not normal. This is not right. There's something wrong about it. She showed up with her friend at the house and she said, "I need to talk to him alone." I was like, "Okay." So her friend and I went to my basement and she sat and talked to my husband alone. Well, I mean, I just finally, at some point in time, you start shutting down as a person, because you're talking and they don't see like your side of it at all, because they're so consumed with his thing. Is he always wanted to be looked up to. He needed to be admired and respected. And like he said, "It makes me feel good when people need me and want my advice and think that."
But not by his wife?
Exactly, right. So it was just, that was the beginning of the downfall.
Yeah.
Eventually we separated. I did have someone else, like outside the truth. I found, I had a relationship,
Sure.
um, but we decided to reconcile. So I went back, and I was reproved at this point in time, of course. And I remember going to a convention or an assembly, and I was reproved, and like you could see he was just so embarrassed by me. I was just an embarrassment. Well, he at this point in time, we had made friends with another couple inside the congregation. They had two kids and they would be at my house all the time, like all the time. I would be at work and they'd be at my house. I'd get home from work and they're at my house. They were at my house all the time, whether I was there or not, because I worked a lot of evening and weekend hours. So they would just come over and hang out with him. And there was something strange about him and this sister, like their friendship. And this is where the story gets a little dark. So I just felt like there was something up. And so when everything happened, we were friends with them. When everything happened with me and I was reproved, I came back and I remember she was like, I had moved out and I came back and she was very like at the house, and she was very odd with me. She was very almost jealous, like of me. I remember I sat down on his lap or something and it was like almost jealousy. And I was like, this is weird. So I just felt there was something between the two of them. And I told that, when the elders talked to me about it, I told them, and that this was a source of contention. And so he got talked to, and they said, I remember him coming home and crying like a baby and saying, and he was not an emotional person. "These are my friends. I can't believe you're making me lose my friends." And I'm like, "Well, we're married and you're more concerned about them than me." So I decided it was done. I was done. I was over it. So I moved out, and this was like in March. And February I left. And one day in March I was out shopping and get this phone call from a girl I work with. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm shopping." She said, "Who are you with?" I said, "I'm by myself." "Why? What's going on?" "Oh, nothing. Have you talked to your family?" And I'm thinking, what is going, something's up, right?
Yeah.
So then I get a call from my sister. Where are you? And I'm like, what's going on? Who are you with? I said, I'm by myself. What's going on? So she tells me that our friends, the husband shot himself.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my gosh. So at this point in time, I'm disfellowshipped. So I'm like, well, no, I was not disfellowshipped. I was going to be disfellowshipped. Um, so it was March 23rd. She said he shot himself and he died. And I said, oh my gosh. So I went to work because that was the only friends I had, right? So I went to work and actually worked with a girl that was also a witness at one time. She was disfellowshipped. And I said, they're going to be married within 6 months of our divorce being finalized. And she said, you think so? And I said, I know it. I know it. So that was a Monday. So on Monday, I'd already started the divorce process. He didn't know that, but I started the divorce process. So on Monday, he killed himself. He committed suicide. On Wednesday, I said I was going to be disfellowshipped that night. And I said, hey, I just reached out to my husband then. I said, I want to come by and see you. But I had this gut feeling, like, you get those gut feelings. And I said, I want to come by and see you. Oh, no, I have enough support. I don't want to see you, blah, 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 blah. Well, I drove by our house because he was still at our house. And the woman's car, whose husband just committed suicide 2 days ago, was in the driveway. And I said, oh, I see why you didn't want me to come by. Oh, it's not like that. It's not like that.
Not like what?
Right? I said,
Yeah.
well, you want to be careful. I appreciate that. So Monday, he commits suicide. Wednesday, she's at the house. On Friday, I'm with my niece and I get a text from him saying, hey, we need to start the divorce process. And I said, I've already started it, blah, blah, blah. And on Saturday, that cold bitch was out bowling with him and another group of friends. And her husband had committed suicide on Monday.
Oof.
That's dark.
Well, no, it's very dark. It's really sad. The loss of her husband, the fact that he felt that he needed to do that is sad, and sad
And
enough for everything.
it
Very
is.
tragic.
It's very
But
tragic. And I had talked to him about it. I said, listen, there's something going on. He's like, I don't see it, which I knew he did. I knew he did. And it broke my heart because he was a really nice person. Like he was the caregiver. He took care of her, he took care of the kids, he did for other people. You couldn't call him at any time and he'd be the one to come and do whatever anybody needed. He was a very kind person, and it just broke my heart that he was in that situation, and he was the victim. He was the true victim there.
wow.
Oh,
It's also, reminiscent of just there's a lot of people I've known a lot of people who have lost their spouse, and maybe not in that way, but in many other ways, and it's always, of course, tragic, and yeah, like you said, 6 months later, within 6 months,
they were married.
they
So
were married. I mean, at times to people who were very close to their spouse, and it's very strange,
very
how
strange.
often that happens in the organization. Like, the body's not cold, and you've already bounced to somebody else and are just ready to get married to that person. It's like, were you always thinking about that? Like,
It's exactly. And like
did you have a backup plan already? It is very strange.
like I just I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And so I think our
Mhm.
divorce was final in like December,
Yeah.
something like that. And they were married within like 5 months.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
They're still married. But yeah, it was just one of those like tragic events. And the daughter, the day he committed suicide, So my niece, she's actually biologically related to my ex-husband. I always say I got her in the divorce, though. She's mine. Um, she was like 18 months old when we started dating, and she's still my girl to this day. Um, her kids call me aunt, and like they know me. They don't know him. They know me. Um, that day that it happened, the man who committed suicide, his daughter said to my niece, "Oh, great! Now my mom can marry your uncle, and we'll be related." The day he committed suicide.
There's
Did I shock you? Is this a shocking one?
no, no, it's just sad to me because it's no, I don't think there's much JW related anymore that can shock me. I hear all the things,
Oh,
but
yeah.
with the work that I do, but it's just it's reminiscent of the I was just thinking it's we often as ex-witnesses focus on the shunning and the detachment that happens at the end. And I like to always point out that it's they can detach so easily at the end because they were never attached to begin with. Jehovah's Witnesses can let people go easily because they're always having to keep everyone at arm's length. No one is a everyone is expendable.
Exactly.
And again, you're just that cog in the machine. So it's like, well, my spouse died. I guess I just get another spouse. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just and they don't really grieve because they're not grieving is a sign of perhaps a lack of faith. If you lose someone that you love, don't you believe in Jehovah? Don't you believe in the resurrection hope? So why are you sad? What's wrong with you?
yeah,
It's just that, and again, if your whole existence and the hope that you've been fed your whole life is that your God is going to come wipe out everyone from the earth so that you can go live happily on it, on the corpse, on a paradise built on the corpses of all of those people. That's dystopian. That's messed up. And you have to be very detached in
you do.
order to allow that in your mind to sound good or right in any way. And that's just how we were all raised. And I'll throw up my own hand. I was
Yeah.
very detached. I didn't care about people. I mean,
No, they
whatever.
say they do. They say they love them and that, they really care
I
about
don't
people. But
love
reality
people.
is it's as soon as someone's disfellowshipped and you just cut cold turkey and you can walk by them
Not
without,
love.
yeah, that is not love. No.
No, it was never love. It was control. It was coercion, but it was not love.
Yes. That is exactly what it was.
Yeah, they can't love people who are not like them. In the Greek myth, Narcissus falls in love with his own reflection in the reflecting pool until he literally falls in his reflection and drowns. He drowns in himself. And that's Jehovah's Witnesses. If you can't reflect back to them who they are, if
Oh,
then they can't see you, they don't care about you, you're expendable. They
yeah.
need you to be a reflection, a mirror reflection of who they are. Otherwise, you don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was eventually, after we divorced and I got remarried, I had my son. My family put the pressure on me. I was reinstated. Um, so technically, I'm not disfellowshipped. I just drifted away, eventually drifted away. So I still have relationships with my sisters. Um, they helped me raise my son, like when I was working and things. But I remember in particular, there was this one sister and she was a pioneer and she was not raised as a witness, but she was die hard, that she developed that ended up marrying an elder and she had this very, very, very self-righteous attitude. But she's the person that would go talk to like the addicts, the alcoholics, she felt comfortable going to those dirty, filthy homes. You know what I mean? Like some people are just okay with that. And she was
Oh no,
that.
I get it. My family
Yeah.
was that family.
Yeah. So she was that person and she just had she had she was always my friend until I left and I was reproved. And then there was like it changed, and um you could tell, I could just tell she really judged me. Like she would say about people, like, I don't understand. They have it, and then they have everything when it comes, because you have the truth, you have everything,
Right.
and then you leave. And so she would look at me like I was worse than these not good people, just
Oh,
because
100%.
didn't want to be a witness. And I remember that just really irritated me because I'm like, how did we flip that switch so fast? To from us being friends to you just now thinking I'm this horrible person. So I that was the real change. Like, yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't care about me.
No.
They care about controlling me, but as soon as the control is gone, psh, I'm out of here.
Yeah, it's really sad to see how shallow the relationships are. When you see it, it can be startling at times to realize that they're not really there for you, they're there for them.
Exactly.
And can I ask, because you kind of bounced to like the having of the son, was the JW that you were married to the father of your son?
No, so
Oh, okay. And I'm not asking to be nosy.
oh,
I'm just
no, no,
asking to see, like, is there a conflict there of like trying to raise him between
no,
two worlds? So,
no.
okay.
He's we never had children. He never wanted children because he was a child himself. So, like you can't have children if you because he was very self-absorbed. Everything revolved around him and what he wanted. I remember like, oh, I'm gonna get a new phone. You can have my old one. Or
Mhm.
I bought this new shirt. I don't want this one anymore. You can have this one. You know what I mean? One time he made a comment, and this was also like when I realized like things are not right in this relationship. He would like I couldn't mow the lawn because the neighbors would see me, and he didn't want the neighbors to see me out mowing the lawn. But we needed mulch, and I had this little car, and he said, "Can you go get mulch?" So I went and got mulch. I went to and I loaded it all in my trunk by myself, right? And I came home and I said, "I'm going to go unload it." He goes, "Oh no, I don't want the neighbors to see you unloading it because
Appearance.
they'll look bad. It'll look bad on
Yeah,
me."
look bad
Yeah.
on him.
And that's the way everything was. It was always about how it looked on him. And remember saying, because I didn't stand up. I was young. I just took it. And I remember saying, just you don't care you really don't care about me doing it. It's just about people seeing me doing it. So you really don't care about me. And he was like, well, that's not true. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's about appearances, and everything for him was about appearances.
Well, it's a very JW, also a very narcissistic thing to see other people as an extension of you,
Exactly.
and to be worried that how they are will reflect upon you, because ultimately it's all about you.
Yes.
It's really sad, and yeah, he was willing to, sounds like, give of himself to others to maintain certain appearances, but it was the person who's supposed to be closest to him, his own spouse, that he suddenly didn't care about the appearances with,
Exactly.
taking advantage of it there.
And I remember like we were supposed to have a family study, and like he really hated field service. He hated going door to door. Um he'd say, I'd say, well, we are supposed to have a family study. And he'd say, well, I think we both get more out if we just did it alone, because he wanted to like rush through and just, do it. Um, Whereas at the meetings, though, he would talk about the importance of family studies. And I'm sure we probably even had some part about our family studies schedule, even though it was just two people, even though it was just all fake. It was not real. It was this imagined life that we didn't have.
Most of the demonstrations and parts on the programs aren't real and are imaginations. And if nothing else, if there's some kernel of truth to it, they're very embellished,
Exactly.
because they know what you need to say when you get up there. It's about appearances. So, two things that I'd like to ask about. One, you said, because I know you had gotten disfellowshipped and then you had also been reinstated. So, what were those two things like for you? Because those are very big moments in a JW's life.
Right. So the disfellowshipping was hard. It was really hard because everybody, I was like, I still had friends at work, but I did not do anything with them. So like socially, like that was my social circle was all Jehovah's Witnesses. And my family, of course, was, I lost like the connection to them. But like it was really, really hard. It was very lonely. Um, and I remember, so I had these aha moments in my life, when something happens, you're like, oh, this is
Mhm.
so I had a friend that I worked with. She is a lesbian and I knew they weren't, I don't think they were married at that time, her partner. And I'd known her partner through carpet cleaning. Like she had a business and we used to clean her carpets. So they invited me to their house for a party and I showed up there and, like all their friends were gay. So, I'm there and there was this aha moment, like, these people are all really good, cool, fun, nice people, and they're being shunned by the world. And I can relate because I've been shunned by a religion, and it opened my eyes like, wow, the judgment. And I just kind of had this connection, like it just enlightened me, like, oh, gay, because I still was feeling guilty. I'm
Mhm.
feeling guilty to be hanging around with the gay community because like it was wrong. That's everything I've been taught was wrong. And so I'm like, these people are damn good people. And it was like a life-changing moment. And we're still good friends to this day. And like I did not judge people the same way after that.
Yeah, you started to see that you were lied to in that way.
Yeah, and like all people, there's different reasons that we as Jehovah's Witnesses, or when I was a Jehovah's Witness, would, like, oh well, their lifestyle, oh they're not married and they live together and they're that, and you just judge, you judge. And I
Yeah.
was like, man, the life is so hard when you're judging everyone. If you just open up your eyes, you'll see that there are good people outside of Jehovah's Witnesses, because you're always told the world is bad and it's
Yeah, I've met
safe
met far better people in the world than inside the
be-
organization.
because they're good, because they want to be good, and
Yeah.
not because they're going to be punished for it.
Well, and it's sincere. It's not just an appearance,
Oh,
right?
yeah, right.
They're judging all of these gay folks for their lifestyle and their
Yeah.
choices and their blah blah, acting like they must all have terrible relationships when it's Jehovah's Witnesses that are locked into these loveless marriages a lot and have horrible relationships and destroy their families.
Dark secrets that they keep and,
Yeah,
portray to be something else. So then when I was reinstated, there were people like, oh, we're so happy,
yeah.
but at the same time, it was still not the same because I was married to a worldly man,
Mhm.
and I had I had left and I got a taste of what freedom was like, And it's funny, it felt so constricting, so like I just couldn't breathe because I felt like everything you have to walk all the lines, you have to go to all the meetings, and I got used to not going to meetings, and I got to tell you, I found a lot of fun things to do during that time.
Sure.
And
Like anything.
exactly. And I didn't miss it. It wasn't like,
Sure.
oh, I didn't need it. I never felt that strong spiritual connection. So it wasn't like something was missing. It was like something was added. So that was hard for me being reinstated. And I remember another aha moment. My husband went to the meeting with me and he's like, sure, whatever. Yeah, you want to go, I'll go with you. So he went with me. And there was this watchtower study. And you know how they do. Let's talk about the picture. Let's talk about the picture. What's going on here? What do you see? Well, it was a guy and he was standing next to a sports car and he's like, got a briefcase and looking at his watch. And then there was, I think, what would be a sister, looked like she was at a bar. Maybe, I don't know if there was a man with her or there was some drinks, And so everybody starts like picking it apart. Like, oh, well, he doesn't love Jehovah because he is so consumed with work and his car and, material things. And my husband is not good at whispering. His whisper voice is not, it shouldn't be allowed in public. So he's like, that's bullshit. And I was like, shh, okay, whisper, whisper. So then my cousin, who she's always been very liberal about drinking, makes a comment about the sister being out drinking too much. And he's like, what? Like he knows. He's like, don't I remember at the family reunion, she was talking about shots. And I'm like, shut up. But it was like one of those times I'm like, oh yeah, like here we are. We're tearing a picture of people doing normal everyday things. We're like coming up with all the things
Judging them.
wrong, right?
Mhm.
And it's like from a picture, we don't even know what we're doing. I mean, he could be delivering documents to the society, like he's got this briefcase, right? So like, why? It was just, that was mind blowing to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have done this so many times, looked at people and torn them apart. And I don't even know. So then I read the book Shunned. Have you read that book, Shunned?
Well, I haven't read it. Talking about, well, there's a couple books out there
Well,
actually.
she was a Jehovah's Witness. She was a pioneer.
Couple of books actually.
Yeah. So this one in particular is called Shunned.
Okay.
I don't know.
There's
So
like Shunned a Survival Guide, and then there's Shunned, a book by Linda Curtis, and I interviewed the author of that one, so
okay,
that might be it.
is Linda? She was married and she was a pioneer, and she divorced. Her and her husband divorced, and then she's remarried, and her husband passed away. He was a professor, I think. Or does
Been
that
a
sound
long
familiar?
time. It's
Okay,
been a
so
long time
long
since
time.
the
So
interview. So I interview a lot of people.
I can't remember the author's name, but yeah. So that
Okay.
book in particular was called Shunned, and she's talking about her life. And she said she remembers like her moment was she was knocking on doors, going, door to door, and someone she knew came to the door. And she said it was at that moment, like I'm asking him, like, uh, something to the effect of like, I don't even know, something to the effect of like, what are you doing? Like, uh, so we would use this line like, if God is a God of love, why does he allow wickedness to go on? And he was
Mhm.
like, didn't want to talk. He's like, first of all, she was shocked. And then he didn't want to talk about it. And she said, here I am going to someone's door, asking them why they're the way they are. Like, who am I to do that? And I remember that being like, yeah, where do I have the place? Or like, how can I go door to door and at someone's house and expect them, like, criticize them for the way they live? Like,
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I think that might be Linda Curtis's
I'm
book.
pretty sure that is.
Yeah, I mean, can you remember, I don't know if you ever did it or not, but I would go out on Christmas Day,
Oh,
and you have a magazine that's like, "Here's what's wrong with everything you're doing right now for
like,
Christmas. Here,
yeah,
take this." It's just the
Jesus was born on
arrogance.
December 25th. That was one of the, I remember that. And yes, I did it a few times and I hated it. Like,
It's
I
brutal.
hated it
Yeah,
at
brutal.
Thanksgiving. And, like, you're like interrupting people's day. Yes.
So it sounds like for you, a lot of these waking moments seem to be around is seeing how Jehovah's Witnesses treat each other and treat other people. That I know for me, it was that lack of love that really was the thing that started opening my eyes. Was like, this is toxic. This is not healthy at all. We say we love these people, but we judge every one of them when we go to their doors. And if they don't listen to us, we're more than happy to let God kill them. That's really messed up, and that's not love. It's just, yeah, it's very warped. Speaking of which, when you came back and got reinstated, and suddenly people who had shunned you were like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you. I love you so much." Whatever. How did that feel inside?
It felt so that one sister in particular I was talking about that was very, critical and like just treated me coldly. She was still cold, even after I was reinstated. She was like, it was like she was angry at me. Like, why is what I do in my life making you angry?
Well, for the same reason that witness parents get angry around this stuff too, which is there's no separation between them and Jehovah's Witnesses. They are Jehovah's Witnesses. So
Exactly.
when you are disloyal to Jehovah, you are basically being disloyal to them because Jehovah's Witnesses individually, just like they equate JW.org with Jehovah and the governing body, they kind of do it selfishly themselves too, like they're God. And
Oh
you have
yeah.
somehow been disloyal to them because
Oh
how
yeah.
dare you do what they don't want you to do?
Yeah.
It's they interject themselves almost like they're your mediator between you and God. It's this weird possessive thing that they do.
It is. And for me, like I remember just because it's I think I don't know with all Jehovah's Witnesses that leave, if it's a process, some people just stop, but like it
Well,
was like
true healing is a process. Some
ex-
people live in denial and just stop and white knuckle life, but true healing is a process.
so that for me, like there's these little steps, like, oh yeah, there's this and there's this. And I'm a naturally curious person. So like I like to, well, obviously why I like to go to the brewery and see how something, or distillery and see how something's made, even though I'm not going to drink it, is it's just my curiosity.
Yeah.
So I decided, and I wasn't even like I was searching for religion, but like I was working in this kid that came to work for me. He was Muslim. And so I'm like, what do they really believe, right? So like I'm watching or I'm listening to this documentary. I don't know if I went on YouTube, found all these different videos, and they were explaining how how it began. And it said something like, I think it was Muhammad went into a cave and he got the visions and he wrote it down. And I was like, it's crazy. And then I was like, oh, like, you know what I mean? So like for
Yeah.
me,
How is what I believe any less?
exactly. And so
Yeah.
for me, like that was
Yeah.
one of those things that I'm like, oh gosh, here I am judging people again, saying, oh, that's crazy. And yet I've been believing the same thing. So, and I just really have tried, and I tell my son that I'm like, listen, just let people be. If they're not hurting anyone else, it's none of your business what they do. Okay? Just let them be who they are. Accept them for who they are, love them for who they are. And I think differences are cool. Like I
Sure.
like to hang out with people that are different than me that, have something to bring. Jehovah's Witnesses, they like them all to be the same.
Yeah.
So, like there's a whole world out there to
Mhm.
experience and to learn about, as long as you have an open mind. And that is the biggest thing for me that I discovered along the way, that I'm actually really open-minded. I was just taught to be, like, this is the way you believe and this is the way you act and this is the way you think. But in general, I'm a really open-minded person, and I just, I just want to know people and understand them. And I like to know what makes them tick and who, why they're the way they are. So that's the biggest, that's my personal journey, is like, you know, you're an open-minded person. You're accepting. You're not that person that you were forced to be for so long.
Well, and isn't
Or
that more
to be.
loving? Isn't it more loving to be able to
Yep.
love people who are different than you and maybe believe or think differently than you than to only love people who are exactly like you? If they're
Right?
exactly like you just love yourself.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love people who I disagree with vehemently on many subjects, but I can still care about that person and I
Yeah.
don't wish anyone ill and uh I'm interested in what makes them tick too. We all come from somewhere.
Yeah, it's funny because my husband, he is like he was the kid that he was raised Catholic-ish, but he's also like he said I went to every church. Like I just went to every church. He's very, very curious. So he's like explored them all. And he doesn't like he has no need for religion in his life. Um, but he knows like he's explored it. He's actually like, hey, let's check this out. So for me, he's like a truly kind person. Like he is also the person, people call like, "Hey, I'm moving." And he's like, "I'll be right there," expecting nothing in return. And genuinely cares about people. Like he'll text my sisters before I do and be like, "How are you guys? I haven't heard from you for a while." And I'm like, "Oh," he's like, "Have you talked to him?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Well, I talked to him and they said," so, like he cares genuinely about people and he has no religion. And he does it because it's just who he is. It's not what's expected of him. It's not what, Jehovah says you should do. It's just he's a genuinely kind, nice person. So for me, that was also very, eye-opening because we're always told the world is scary and they're bad and they're harsh and they're gonna chew you up and spit you out and leave you. That's not true. It's not true. There's so many good people. So many good people.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's no different than the rolling with a stereotype here, but the abusive husband, let's say, who's telling his wife, if you leave me, no one will ever love you like I do. You need me. The world will chew you up and spit you out. I mean, abuse is abuse, and it has the same patterns in the organization. It's just they're lying to you about who you are and what you're capable of, and who other people are and what they're capable of,
Yep.
and well, lying to you about who they are as well, and making themselves sound like some sort of magnanimous, amazing people when they're truly not.
Yeah,
They do horrendous things.
they do.
It's a shame.
And
Um,
I do believe there are still some witnesses. Like I'm not so like I don't feel so bitter about it, but like I feel like there are some good witnesses, truly good witnesses. Actually a lot. I just feel like they're just stuck and misguided.
What I would I guess what I would say to that is I think that there's a lot of witnesses with good characteristics, but those good people will still shun people until they commit suicide, until they unalive themselves. They will still let their kid die needing a blood transfusion. They will still deny their kids an education. They're still
Oh,
judging everyone around them. Even the best witnesses still have these unfortunately, these really terrible characteristics too,
yeah,
and those things do come from the cult a lot of times, but they're allowing it in their life, and they're not fighting back against it, and that's there's not many other groups where we would look at people and sing their praises while they, you know, are anti-LGBTQIA, and wishing for their death. Like that's that's it's complicated to think about, isn't it? But I think
it
a
is.
lot of times we because we were there, and I have compassion for everyone there, but I have to admit that I was a shitty person when I was one. I really was. I had some good characteristics, but I wasn't a very good person. I'm a far better person today on the outside, which is a shame because all those witnesses are missing out on the best version of Mike, or the best version of Diana.
Yeah,
People who can truly love fully today, they miss out on us.
Yeah. I'm definitely a better person today. I'm
Yeah,
truly
me
a better
too.
person.
Way better person.
Way better.
Way, way, way better. Well, so was there anything so I know you mentioned, probably Linda Curtis's book, Shunned. Was there anything else that helped you to break down anything after you left or as you started waking up, I guess I should say?
I think it was like I said, it was a couple little, little things,
Just
just
moments.
moments analyzing. And it still happens. And it's funny to
Yeah.
me, like how ingrained it was in my brain that even today, someone will say something or do something, and my mind says, well, that's not right. And I have to still constantly retrain myself. Like, it's okay to not feel that way. It's okay to look at this, or whatever it is. And it's crazy, to this day it's still there. And like, I mean, I haven't gone, my son is 11, I haven't gone to meetings almost the whole, at least 10 years. um you know Probably longer than, and then there was a period of time before that. So like, I would say in general, I've been away for, what is this year? Almost 15 years.
Wow.
So, because I this fellowship, and then I went back, and then I was, kind of, but truly, once I left and I started to experience the world, um, I was never the same. Like, I was never the same. And I had this friend, we worked together. He was involved in a very controlling religion. It was, I don't know if it's non-denominational or what, but he was a pastor, but it was very, very controlling. And he and I talked, and he left as well, and it's been a process for him. Um,
Sure.
and so there were things that he would say, like, well, like, he would give me an example of something. I'd be like, oh, Jehovah's Witnesses say the exact same thing, but they're so different. They're so different. And he said to me, he said, Diana, everything you know about the Bible is someone else's opinion. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you're right. That's so accurate, because I never read the Bible on my own, without having someone else tell me what it meant. And so, like, that was a real eye opener. Like, but yet at the same time, it's hard. Not that I want to or have, but like, to explore. Like, if I read the Bible, I know that would still be in the back of my head. That whole conversation is still there.
Well, and then you'd also be picking up the Bible instead of the Quran or any of the other holy
Exactly.
books,
Right?
right? We're all born atheists.
Yeah.
That other stuff is taught to us later, and we are given perspectives, and then we start reading things in from there. But no one pops out with the belief in God. That has to be taught. And then it's taught based on where you live and who your
Exactly.
particular parents are and what you're around.
Yeah. And it's funny, because I didn't like, my husband and I will talk, and he's like, well, and what I discovered about religion is it's always a form of control. It's a form of controlling people. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. So, that's in general. It's how do you control the people? You tell them what they should believe and what they should think and how they should act, right?
And you give them a hope that takes away mankind's biggest fear, and that's death. You give them a
Exactly.
hope that makes it sound like that's not real, and that there's something afterward. And if the person believes in that, fair enough. But
But you
yeah,
also,
there's a lot. It's a pretty good sales pitch, really, when you think about it in certain
yes,
ways.
and you keep them in line, because the fear of it is,
Mhm.
if you don't do it, then this is going to happen. So it's control.
Sure. Um, well, it's how humans control each other in many ways, many areas of life. Um, so today, I guess I would ask. So, do you do you have people today that shun you, or if you're out in the world around you, I mean, do they actively shun you, or is it just like most people kind of soft shun you and maybe be like, I'm sure that maybe certain people wouldn't want to come up and say hi to you as much, or because they kind of know.
It's funny, because they still come around. Like, I got, like, the memorial, I got the invitation with a little note on my door. But in
Mhm.
general, a lot of them don't know me anymore. It's funny how it changes. Like, the congregation changes. So a lot of them wouldn't know me if I was out. But a lot of times I avoid them before they have a chance to see me. So
That's fair too.
yeah, like, I just and I still have some people that I talk to that I feel like an attachment to, but they're more like family. that are witnesses, but I mean, it's not all the time. Um, there's just been some like this family went through a lot of just tragedy. So, I'm still like there and we'll see them and talk to them. But like in general, no, I just avoid it myself.
Um,
I do know that there are people that I've seen out that will, I don't know if they recognize me or not, but they do turn their heads, so I just
sure.
do the same.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you got reinstated, right? So,
Right. So I'm technically not
yeah.
totally shunned, but I'm
Um,
still bad association, I'm sure.
well, you definitely are right now.
Exactly.
um, so moving on into that post JW life, and I know it's been some time since you were there, but what do you enjoy about your life today that may is different than what you had in the past? What is good in your world today that you enjoy on the outside of Jehovah's Witnesses?
I Becoming a mom was like the best thing in the whole world. Like that was something I would have never experienced if I'd remained one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And that also was so eye-opening to me, like the amount of love I felt, and I didn't even know I possessed it in my body. Like the
Hmm.
fact too that I realized, like, how do people cut their kids off? Like my kid could never do anything that would just make me like, okay, I'm not talking to you. You're done. You're out of my life. So that was that was one of the things. And my son is so like he is just this. He has a big personality, a great imagination, and he's like curious beyond curious. So for me, just watching him explore the world and learn, and like I've really given him the opportunity to just experience religion on his own. Like I'm not going to tell you, like I haven't even hardly talked to him about being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He's 11 and a half. So, he understands a little bit more. So, a few months ago we had a talk and I was telling him about like what it was like growing up, and it was really eye opening for him, but being able to shape a child in a healthy way and just letting him develop as a person without me, because like I think, who would I have been if I wasn't one of Jehovah's Witnesses? What, like I didn't go to college, of course, those kind of things that you think, who would I have been? So like I just want to give him the opportunity to be who he is in life without me shaping it in an unhealthy way, controlling it to
So it's
force
not
it.
really even shaping; it's just encouraging him to be his best self.
Exactly, exactly. And that's,
Yeah.
that's what I always tell him, like, there's a lot of things in life you could beat, but kindness is something that no matter what you do, kindness is just so important. So, I enjoy that immensely. It's the greatest joy of my life. I like actually being able to travel and do things. Like everything was always around meetings, like, okay, well, you can't do this because you have this to do. I just like the freedom of not feeling the pressure to be somewhere and do things that I wasn't enjoying. Like I just didn't enjoy those things. So that's something I've enjoyed since leaving, is being me, just being me.
It's all you ever needed to be.
Right? Right?
I'm glad that you get to today, and I'm glad that you shared you with us, so that I'm sure there's people out there who will resonate with many things that you had to say. You have your own, you have a unique story yourself. Like I think we were talking beforehand, it's kind of that cult Mad Libs. It's the structure of all this control, and we change the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, and such. And you have some unique aspects to your story and the way that you were raised and such, and the detachment slash still attachment to this thing growing up, because your mom wasn't fully in for different reasons, but it still has the same impacts and it still has oftentimes the same results. And I'm really glad that you shared. I'm sure it will help others.
Thank you. I hope so.
If you'd like some extra content, if you'd like to learn more about our guests today, maybe even have an opportunity to connect further with them, you can do so by joining the back room tier at patreon.com/shunned. If you want to tell your story on the podcast, buy merch, or get more information, go to shunnedpodcast.com.